execute judgment on you, COVID-19. I execute judgment on you, Satan. You destroyer. You killer. You get out. You break your power. You get off this nation. I demand judgment on you. I demand a vaccination to come immediately.
Digital gramophone makes no sense.
Hey guys, it's John. So, I know I did a conversation with Dean last week, but other than that, it's been a couple of months, longer than a couple of months since I've done a proper video. I don't know, I don't really need to get into it. Just haven't been as inspired to do this as of late. Still been a lot of records that I've bought over September and October. I took all of November off. It was a no-buy-vember until the last couple of days. And I did go out with Dave, digging with Dave over the holiday weekend, and picked up a few records with him. But yeah, so today we're gonna do another Purge Pile video. And today's topic is something that all of us have talked about, all of us go over in our brain over and over and over again, and that's fighting the completist nature. Now, some of us collect specific artists and are really hardcore on those artists, and so having all of their records makes sense, right? And that's cool if you're a real avid collector. There are a few bands that I have almost everything by and would have everything by, because I'm missing maybe one record, like by the band Low, who I absolutely love. I have all of Spoon's studio output, and I'll probably continue to buy some of their other outlying discography that I don't have, some like EPs and maybe even some singles and stuff. But there are other artists that I just absolutely love, that I have so many albums by, and I wonder if I'm not just gonna have the whole discography, which I don't want or desire, then why do I even have as many of them as I do by these three artists in particular? And these are difficult ones. These are the ones that are hard for me to let go of. Bruce Springsteen, Neil Young, and Bob Dylan. Now, Bob Dylan and Neil Young, obviously, you're going to have a lot of their albums if you're a record collector, if you're into that music and having that music, just because their discographies are so expansive. Bruce doesn't come quite as close as those guys, but he's got a lot, and I have roughly, give or take, 25 albums by all three of those artists. Some of them I just don't, some of their discography I just don't feel the need to have. Even Bruce, even as much as I love Bruce. And so those decisions have already been made, but I still look at what I do have on my shelves, and I sometimes think, do I really need these too? And that's, where it gets tough. I'll start with Bruce, and this is probably going to make a lot of sense to a lot of people, and this is going to, Chris at the Long Cut is going to have a hard time with this. He's probably just going to shut off the video. But these two albums from '92, Human Touch and Lucky Town. There are songs on here that I love. If I Should Fall Behind on this one is one of my all-time favorite Bruce songs. And If I Wish I Were Blind off of Human Touch is one of my all-time favorites. There are other, the singles, the title tracks on both these albums are really good. And, you know, there are a few others, but half of these albums, more than half of this album, I could do without. And about half of this album, I just don't, and I just never spin them. These are OG presses, so that's one of the reasons why I've held on to them. But now that they've been reissued, the value on those is just not what it used to be anyway. And so if I'm not spinning those albums, am I really going to go back to them? Am I really dying to listen to them? Not really. Especially when, you know, the better cuts are on this. And I even like some of the live versions better. And that's really what this exercise is all about. That's really what getting rid of stuff is all about for us. You know, I've talked about that in the previous videos and go on and on. You know, making room for new adventures. I'm at a point, and I think I've mentioned this in the previous videos, I'm just at a point where I want to keep my record collection at a certain size. And about where it is good for me. I'd even like to whittle it down some more. And I think over time I will, because I think just some of these albums that I have by some bands, I will just, in time, over the years, I will just look back and I'll be like, well, I haven't really spun that one either. So I have no excuse to hold on to it. Some of them I hold on to for my kids. And, you know, maybe some of those records I'll just pass on down if they get into it. And I won't trade in, you know, anymore. But, yeah, so those are the Bruce samples. With Neil, the only Geffen album that I still have is this one. And I don't love it, but I think it's a really good album, and I love just Neil just going all out country, you know, on this album. But as much as I love his kind of like stick it to the man actions that he went through in the Geffen period, this is just not an essential one to me. And I'll even go with earlier in the catalog, Hawks and Doves. This is a decent album, a decent collection of songs. But now that some of the lost albums have come out, some of these recordings are on those. It's just not as necessary to have this one. And aside from the title track, not the title track, but aside from the leadoff track, which is just a classic, and there's a few others on here that are absolute classics. Freedom is one that I've always just kind of ranked a little bit lower in his discography. It's still really good. It's still a good album. It's still a solid album, but it's honestly not one that I spin as much anymore. I've had this one for a really long time, since my collection was, 200-300 records. And I don't know. It's just, is it really necessary to have 25 Neil Young albums? Is it really necessary to have 25 Bruce albums? What's the point of having records if they're really just going to sit on your shelf? Records are meant to be played. Now, some of you are collectors and, real avid collectors, and you look at your collection as an investment, and I just don't look at it that way. So, I don't know. Bob is where it gets really difficult. It gets really hard with Bob. Because he's got all of these eras, in his career where he was going through so many evolutions as an artist, and having some of those albums to throw on the record player, it's he's one of those artists that really is documenting himself. It's hard to say. It's hard to explain, put it into words eloquently, at least for me, and just going off the top of my head here. But some of those albums are really nice to go back to, like Infidels or Street Legal, which aren't really like his top shelf albums, but to listen to those albums and put yourself in that period of where he was, sometimes that's nice to have and nice to hold on to. So the one that I could really, the only one that I could pull off the shelf is this one. And the reason why is because I haven't listened to this since the week it came out. I haven't put it on the turntable since the week it came out. And I've streamed it since then, or certain songs off of it. But if I'm going to listen to the whole album, I just haven't had the urge to listen to the whole album, right? So do I really need it? And I think that I could probably even go through some of the other ones. And there are other albums of his that I actually don't have on vinyl that I still contemplate picking up, but I just haven't because I don't really know if they're essential to have in this format. You know, Mazzy's got all of them. There's plenty of other people that have all of them, and then they would just never part with those albums. And but for me, I don't know. And those are the three artists that are the most difficult for me to let go of. And there are other bands that I love that have shorter discographies that I hold on to their albums, and I really wonder if I really need those. And maybe I just need to go through the exercise, and I probably eventually will, where I only keep, depending on the size of the discography, what I consider their best albums. And maybe that's all I really need. Maybe I only really need 3 albums, 4 albums by the Decemberists. Maybe I only really need 4 albums by this band. My buddy Brad is at H2 Vinyl is freaking out. But I've just never been a big fan of Villains. I was kind of honestly underwhelmed when it came out. I bought this, has a really nice packaging and alternative artwork and some really cool stuff on the inside of it. But records are made to be spun. And the value, this isn't really like a priceless record either. So there's no reason for me to hold on to it for investment. Maybe it's just time for me to let go. So that's really it. Again, this is a conversation that all of us have had. And I'm saying nothing new here. Nothing new. Maybe I should have said that at the beginning. So I'm going to go through the rest of the pile. And I'm not going to do an explainer on each one. I'm just going to hold them up just so you can see them. I'm just going to try and fly through these. I'm just going to hold them up and show them. Basically, these are the qualifiers. 1, the condition is not good. I love the album, and some of these albums I actually really love, and I'd like better copies, but I don't need placeholders, right? There's no point in me holding on to this, a record that's just noisy as hell all the way through. So that's one reason. Another reason is I've upgraded, and now I have a duplicate, so I can get rid of the other copy that I have. 3, it's just an album that I just don't listen to as much, and I don't really find myself going back to it, and I don't really consider it an essential album to own. Maybe I only really like half of it, or less than half of it, and I've been holding on to it for too long. It's just time to get rid of. All right, let's go. Love this album. Sounds like shit. This one too. All-time favorite, upgraded. All right, that's it. Another Purge Pile video. Hope everybody's doing well. We're getting closer to the end of 2020, and I would love to say that that's the goal, right? Just get to the end of 2020, but we got more to go on the other side, guys. So stay strong, be good to each other. Try and keep it positive. Something's very hard for me to do. So why am I giving that advice? And yeah, I just hope you guys are doing well. And I hope all of my American friends had a good Thanksgiving. And, you know, the other countries that celebrated in their own way. All right, guys. Take care.